Well, Channel Africa producer and African affairs analyst Izak Khomo joins us now to talk about this prosecution and this eventual verdict. Izak, thanks very much indeed for joining us. I guess this is momentous and also quite symbolic, even though it's come decades later.
Thank you. Exactly. It is symbolic simply because although it has come very late, as you say, decades later, approximately 35 years. But the most important thing is this, that Blaise Compaore and his cronies have been found guilty. And not only that, although that Blaise Compaore was not in court, he was sentenced in absentia. But that's a landmark sentencing, and it is going to have very important political ramifications, as actually basically seals the path of the path which was started by Thomas Sankara.
Remind our viewers Compaoré's role in Sankara's assassination.
Well, Compaoré was not actually at the point where Thomas Sankara was shot down. Thomas Sankara was shot down at a gathering, which was a meeting of a political party that he had formed. And after being shot down, Blaise Compaore actually staged a coup, saying that he was trying to get to stabilize the country. But people suspected that basically he was involved in the assassination. So basically there were two things. There was assassination which took place, and then there was a coup that followed. The sad thing is this, that Blaise Compaore was a friend, not only a friend, a family friend of Thomas Sankara. He actually been almost brought up in Sankara's home. And the way that Blaise Compaore turned against his friend and a family friend is something that was surprising.
Do we know why this took so long? I suppose one had to make sure that Blaise Compaore was out of power. Did things move quickly after that?
Well, you've got to understand the politics of Burkina Faso. And you've got to understand the politics of former French colonies. Basically, when Thomas Sankara took over power, he went to the left. And the thing that he did, he actually went and challenged the neo-colonial relations that France had imposed on its former colonies. It was only two colonies which never vouched for that type of relation. And those were Guinea under the late Sékou Touré and Modibo Keïta's Mali. But the rest of the countries, they agreed to get into this France-Afrique relationship. Now, the coming of Thomas Sankara, he overturned that France-Afrique relationship, which was there in that time, Upper Volta, which today is Burkina Faso. And that angered the French. He did a lot of things whereby he actually declared Burkina Faso. In fact, he regained Burkina Faso's sovereignty, and that ended the French. And it was going to be a very bad omen to the French and a very bad example to the rest of the former French colonies. So with that, we find there was a very big conspiracy, which also involved the neighboring country of Côte d'Ivoire, or Ivory Coast, which at that time was under Houphouët-Boigny, in actually engineering that coup. And as you can see that after being overthrown, Blaise Compaore, he has found refuge in Côte d'Ivoire, where he has been given citizenship. And according to the laws of Côte d'Ivoire, a citizen cannot be extradited. But more so, you find that in the war which took place in Côte d'Ivoire, the rebel forces of Tara, they were rebel forces, people don't understand, they were being supplied from Côte d'Ivoire. And it has been established that those supplies of arms that they were getting came from Bulgaria. And the people who picked up the bill, which was the French, So basically, we find that Blaise Compaore was an agent or a vassal of the French neo-colonial designs.
I mean, the way you're talking, I keep flashing back to Patrice Lumumba. Similar circumstances, resisting colonial rule, and eventually the powers that be found a way to silence him. So will Ivory Coast feel any pressure to, I don't know, find a way for Blaise Compaore to see justice?
Well, Ivory Coast will never do so, because basically Ivory Coast have given Blaise Compaore citizenship, and it's very close to the to the people who are in power there, Ouattara and co. They're actually guarding him. And not only that, when Ouattara was leading a rebellion against a democratically elected government of Laurent Gbagbo, that's the thing that people don't understand. He was getting the support of Blaise Compaore and the French. So you find that basically Ouattara and the people in power in Ivory Coast, really, they would not feel threatened, but basically they're just guarding the interests of the French, and also one of the actors who held the French domination. Coming back to your thing about comparing it to Lumumba, in the former French colonies, it was not only, that thing that is not new, because you've got people like Pascal Lissouba of Congo Brazzaville. He was a democratically elected president. He differed with the Total French, in fact, it was ELF, French oil firm, in the sense that he wanted the to increase the share of profits that Congo Brazzaville was getting, away from the thing to 7%, less than 10%. The French refused. And what Pascal Lissouba did, he invited the Americans, who offered them a better deal of 30%. But that spurred ELF Petroleum Company to sponsor, to aid and abet a rebellion, which eventually overthrew Pascal Lissouba. That is what happens. In fact, it also took place in Niger with Amadou Tandja, when he wanted the French to pay the real price for the uranium concentrate. Uranium concentrate was being sold for about $300 a kg, a kilogram. Yet the Niger was only being paid something like 30 cents, 30 dimes, hardly even $1 per kg. Now, those are the situations, the neo-colonial situation that exists in former French colonies. And whatever income that comes from export of minerals or whatever, foreign exchange, they're not paid into the central bank of the African country. They're paid into the French central bank. And that money is released. 80% is kept by the French. And when more money is being needed by the African country, former colony, the French actually lend it to them with a profit. So that's the neo-colonial situation that's taking place, but nobody talks about it.
Getting back to the case that now has a verdict, Blaise Compaore and others, Gilbert Diender, one of the commanders, would you say that the people that were responsible for his assassination are the ones that were tried and found guilty, or do you think that there are other players that perhaps have escaped justice, and maybe even foreign nationals?
Yeah, you see, of course, the French were involved. The French intelligence was involved. In fact, Compaoré, when he was being overthrown by the regular army, you should remember that those French countries, they've got two armies. They've got the gendarme, which is a presidential army, which is much more powerful than the normal army. When the normal army came and overthrew Compaoré, Compaoré was actually scattered out of the country by French intelligence operators who were operating under false things of fake companies. But then you find that the first thing that took place was the whole presidential guard, which was French trained and French officer to some extent, it was dismantled. So you find that there was that big group which was actually involved, but now that has been scattered. Now there are others, I should imagine, but the key players are the ones who have been caught and they've also been tried, the 12 and also the 3 who have also been sentenced to, at least the other 2 who have been sentenced to life imprisonment together with Blaise Compaore. But a very good thing is this, that what Thomas Sankara did to Burkina Faso is that he gave power to the people. Burkina Faso is a country where they've got a very, very strong civil society. The civil society there is very strong, and that is the thing basically which is driving the country. So the most important thing, the civil society is coming back into prominence. And I think even those elements which are supporting the French or supporting Blaise Compaore, they will not be able to take over power that easily, simply because the army which is there is actually the regular army, which is the one that actually put up the tribunal. And again, they are people who actually support the late Thomas Sankara.
Yeah, there are a number of questions, but I'm mindful of time. But maybe one that comes to mind is people do want justice, and I'm thinking about the approach a lot of African states have. Mengistu Haile Mariam, for example, the people in Ethiopia want him, but he's been in Zimbabwe and been taken care of, and so justice will never be served. This is not the only time we've seen this kind of thing. If Blaise Compaore, and I know you're not a lawyer, but does that restrict him to stay inside Côte d'Ivoire? If he flies out of the country, can he find himself in legal problems?
I don't think so. I mean, to say, I think he can go to France. The French will never deport him, since he was a vassal of the French. He has got a lot to say about what the French did. And again, African countries, some of them who are vassals of the French, I will not name the countries, but they will not do anything to arrest him. Yeah. So it's a big thing in Africa. I mean to say, the Africans, they're dilly-dallying as far as the issue of forming an African, what do you call it, an African court. Yeah. African court which would actually handle all these types of crimes or atrocities and war crimes. That is moving. So until such a court is established, then you can find that these cases could be taken to that court. But I should say that the ECOWAS, they've got the ECOWAS court. Now the ECOWAS court is working, and it depends upon the countries themselves or the people, if they could take the case to that court in the ECOWAS countries. Maybe there they could get a verdict, but it would be the same verdict as was being held or given at the army tribunal, because Blaise Compaore can just take a jet and fly off to Spain or fly off to France. And then the French will never do anything. They'll never send him back.
Izak, thank you so much indeed, always giving us a great context for the stories on the continent. Thank you so much indeed for your time. Thank you.